Hey friends, welcome to the Aeroponic Tower channel. Today is work day. I'm kind of jumping in late before the gym, but we need to plant the tiny trees. So I'm going to show you how to plant the tiny trees, how to make them tiny. And I went to a friend's and they had wild cherries and wild plums on their property. And her son dug me up a few, and so I'm going to put those into the pots I take the trees out of and baby them for a while. When you can find native fruiting plants, they're not going to be like a grocery store cherry or plant, whatever it is. So I'm not going to get that meaty cherry that has a small pit. These are about 50% pit, 50% cherry, but they're incredible. They taste amazing. And when you're growing a native, the plant's going to grow really fast and it's going to produce a crazy amount of fruit because it's just adapted to this area. So I love to grow wild food. So these were two huge wins for me to get these plants. So I'm super excited to just get them in pots. I want to baby them for a while before I put them out into the forest. Just get some nice roots established because they were ripped out of the ground. But we need to start some seeds. I talk all the time about starting seeds every couple of weeks to stay on top of it. And some of my towers look pretty rough. They are, every season, I have towers that look rough. As one season fades out and another one starts, some of my younger towers look amazing. And the older ones look a little rough. It doesn't mean they're done, but some of the things are starting to get to the end of their life. And I will see this a lot on Facebook groups. Like, what is wrong with this plant? What is wrong with that plant? Most of the time, it's just that plant is done. It's old. It's past its prime. And so a lot of my things are getting to that phase. Not a lot. I would say half my towers. I also grew tomatoes out of season and made it where we had tomatoes before our last frost was even here. So I've been harvesting tomatoes. I have hundreds, probably thousands of tomatoes to harvest off this one tower. So that's incredible. I'm so glad I grew out of the season. But because of that, they have all of the fun diseases that tomatoes get when they're exposed to too much water. Or in our area, typically my plants would look like this at the end of summer moving into fall. So I'll start some new seeds in the summer, and those are the plants that'll feed us in the fall. But now I'm also going to start some seeds early summer that will feed us late summer. And we're just kind of cycling through because a lot of these plants are very diseased, and I'm not sure I even want to keep them growing after they have this massive, massive flush of fruit. So I'm just preparing for that. And that's just the consequence of tomatoes. Tomatoes can be a perennial if you live in the absolute perfect climate. Most of us don't. I live in a rainforest. We are prone to water-based diseases. So cauliflower. I want to grow some chervil, some unique greens, some peas. There's just a few things that I don't have right now that have been bothering me. I don't have any cilantro, and I don't have any dill, but I don't even know where those seeds are. Bok choy, collard, broccoli, basil, herbs. Okay, so spaghetti squash. I've had a hard time getting my spaghetti squash to take off. So replanting this, I also don't have any yellow squash. So we're gonna get as well. And squash, you know, you can plant like things with like things, and that will mean that when they sprout, everything's kind of on the same sprouting schedule. So you don't wanna start a squash with like a pepper because the pepper takes a while to come up. The squash is going to pop up really quickly. And I think that's all I'm going to do for now. I'm also suffering from a lot of powdery mildew. Now I'm not staying on top of it with my spray, for one, because I don't have a spray bottle that works. They're all such crap. They last like a day. So I'm going to try and get better about that and spray tonight. I can save the plants I have, but I don't like how quickly it's coming. I think we're just having a really, really wet spring, early summer. It's just dewy here all the time. And I don't remember it being that way last year. I've only been in this area 4 years. We're going on 5 years. So endive. I've been really enjoying the endive. It's a great one for summer. So I'll put that with my squash. I'll just start 3 more, and we'll start 6 of those. So I already did Asian greens. Yeah, so, you know, every year's different. And some years it's like the year of green beans, and the next year it's not. And some years it's like the year of cucumbers. I don't know why all the time. But right now the peas are doing amazing. So I'm actually gonna plant more of those. The green beans are doing really well. I think I'll start more green beans next week. The squash and cucumbers already have squash bug signs. I just removed a leaf with eggs, so we are full blown like fight for the squash mode. That means from this point on, fighting powdery mildew and fighting squash bugs is like my #1 job in life. Not really, but it's something you got to stay on top of if you want squash. So that's what I'll be doing. This is dill. And I will probably start new squash zucchini seeds next week, just to be prepared. This is the slow bolt cilantro. Cilantro can be tricky to start in the hot summer months, so I'm not going to put these on a heat mat. These will just sit out on the side table. Actually, I might just put them at the base of this. So I need to pair these with something that doesn't need the heat lamp. So I've been growing the Tom Thumb pea. I've moved away from those. They just don't get big enough to justify growing them. This Courbe de Massey, I don't know, Massane. They didn't do well on the tower. I have a lot of both of these, so that's disappointing. And a golden sweet. I was looking for my patio pride. Those are the ones doing really well on the tower. So I'm gonna plant those. I'll plant all of these in the regular gardens in the fall. I'll get rid of every one of these peas. I'm just gonna do a massive raised bed of just peas because I wanna start using up all my seeds. All right, I don't see any patio pride. These are some Salanova. Salanova is the lettuce that produces baby-sized greens on a full mature plant. And these seeds are old, so I'm trying to use them up because they're pelleted. Pelleted seeds don't last as long. So every time I start seeds, I'm kind of looking for those things that need to be used up. All right, we have a few more spots. And baby cauliflower, and do that next. The Cherville. Did we do Cherville? Yes. We did the Cherville. Let's do the dwarf tomatoes. So, here. Why did I do that? Okay, so I put the lettuce in this one. I'm gonna move the lettuce out and put it in with the cilantro. That's actually, lettuce doesn't like it super hot to sprout either. Not that it's super hot here. We have a very mild climate. It's just wet. Now we will get hot. I don't know about this summer. It feels like we might have a mild summer. I'm gonna do some crisp head lettuce. This is an iceberg. I'm doing a hefty pinch. These are amazing. Really wanted to do more than 2 of those. Oh well, I'll plant more of those next week. All right, let's get started with the row of tomatoes. The ones I have absolutely loved are the Heartbreakers, the Dora Reds, not the Bush Champion, the Twiggy Orange. Those are the orange ones I just showed you. So good. Cucumber Bushcrop, Geranium Kiss. I'm looking for indeterminate varieties. So even though these are small, a husky cherry red. These do really well. These are indeterminate. This one, the orange is the determinate. So is the Heartbreakers Dora, but they don't act like determinants. Little Birdie Red Robin, that's a determinant too. Well, it looks like I'm only gonna get determinants. Fantastico, early, no, I don't want aroma. Tumbler Hybrid Red Cherry. Tumbler Tom Yellow, that's a determinant. Actually, that's the one that you guys saw, not the other one, because the Heartbreakers are a different shape. These are the cherry tomatoes that are rounder. All right, that's enough. Definitely gonna do the Tumbling Tom. I really love the taste of that one. And I'm gonna plant these 3 seeds per rockwool and thin them. So that's a trick with some things, not all things, but some things like tomatoes, you can do more than one and then break them apart and give them their own rockwool. So I don't need to start that many individuals and take up all that space. I can do this, divide them up, and I'll grow, I'm doing 3 of each. Like if they all take, I'll grow all of these. Okay. And that way I can grow all these different varieties. In just one tray to start, instead of having to set up a whole bunch of trays. And I'm working fast because I'm going to the gym. It's almost gym time. We had college enrollment for my boys. So we've been on calls, just, you know, life. All right, I have room to do Patio Choice Red Cherry. Why not? Now again, I've mentioned this before. If you grow tomatoes indoors, it's doable with these varieties I'm talking about. Hanging basket varieties from Totally Tomato. They do not taste as good as if you grow them outside. So what I'm trying to do is to get a super early harvest in the spring, a late spring harvest, like consistently have tomatoes all the way through like November outside. So that's a long time because I was able to start them in here and I keep interval planting them, and then I'll move them into the garage and we'll work on having a better harvest this winter than we did last winter. Maybe, I don't know, I might just not grow tomatoes indoors in the winter. It gets so cold in this garage that they have a hard time setting fruit. So I don't know, I'm 50-50. All right, I put more of the crispini lettuce, and let's cover and get to work on those trees. So what I'm doing all the time, every day I come out and evaluate. I'm evaluating the food based on what we eat. So I'm looking, you know, do we have enough lettuce to have salads for dinner? Do we have enough like meaty foods to put on the table, like broccoli, cauliflower, squash, things like that? Do we have all the herbs we need? And when we don't, you know, am I gonna run out of tomatoes? What's about to die? What looks sickly that needs to be replaced in, like the tomatoes? So that's what I'm doing all the time. And I start seeds right now. I'm kind of starting seeds every week. I say every 2 weeks, but I've got so many different foods going that once a week has worked out a little bit better. And I just keep growing things, guys. Like, our food systems are so corrupt. I talk about this all the time. If you read the back of labels, go to Amazon, not Amazon, which technically is Amazon, go to Whole Foods, read the back of the labels. Everything says bioengineered now. And bioengineered is different than GMO. You can look up the differences. And yeah, well, I'm working my butt off to constantly grow our own food. And I hope it inspires you and equips you to do it yourself, because it's very, very important. So all of these systems are about replacing the grocery store, about food security long-term with the perennial things, which we're about to go tackle, And then this stuff is the annuals where we're just turning over fast, fast, fast. So we're investing into the long-term systems. It's a long game, and we're daily filling up our shopping carts with this. Okay, so the lighting's gonna be a little off here. So you guys know I like to keep everything super simple and easy to manage. So that includes fruit trees. So I'm gonna plant what we call a tiny fruit tree. And so what we're doing is behind me, over there, that is a dwarf tree. A dwarf tree is just a smaller tree, but it's still very, very large, and then get really large, like over 12 feet. I prune that one pretty heavily every year and keep it small, but these are going to never get taller than me. And so we're going from my height, which I'm 5'4", to about this size is the circumference of this tree. Now sometimes they branch out a little further depending on, like peaches and nectarines are a little bit longer branched, but we're going for kind of this size. And so what this does is at the end of the season, so I'm gonna prune after they bloom. So what is that? Sometime in the summer, lightly, just to clean things up for airflow. And I'm gonna heavily prune in the winter before they bloom and keep them really small. And that is going to encourage them, first off, fruit trees love to be pruned. So they're gonna be more prolific in their production as we prune them and keep them smaller. And what we're going for is manageability and for being able to fit a huge variety of food in a very, very small space. This is my permaculture landscaping. You guys have seen this before if you've been here. If you're new here, welcome. I grow a ton of food using simple, sustainable systems, trying to maximize everything we can grow. So I'm gonna have 1, 2, 3, probably 6 tiny fruit trees just in this little area here. So that's the power of the tiny fruit tree. More variety, easier to manage. We'll get a diverse harvest of different fruits at different times instead of having to manage like a big tree. And in this small of a yard, it would take over the whole yard and I wouldn't have any room to grow anything else. So here's what we do. A couple of things to discuss. So when we're dealing with permaculture principles, we're using plants to fertilize and build soil. So we're mimicking the forest. So someone asked me, what do I feed my blueberries? And I said nothing, because a blueberry typically grows in the forest. It grows wild here, and it's an underbrush. It's kind of in a field, so it likes sun in that it's more field-like, but it's also still an underbrush bush. Not completely underbrush where it's shady, like something under this big bush, but protected. So you'll hear blueberries are full sun. I can't tell you how many times I have killed blueberries by planting them in the full sun and they die. So I've learned, so someone asked me how my bushes are so big. They're as tall as me and they're prolific. I don't feed them at all. All I've done is put them in an area where they get partial sun, a good amount of sun, but are still filtered and not super harsh sun. And I created this forest floor for them. So we do that by growing plants. We chop them when they're done producing, and we use them as mulch, and we build the soil, and the minerals and the nutrients and the plants feed the soil feeds the trees and the bushes, so they produce. So that's what we're doing here. So we can think through different plants based on our goals. So I've mentioned before in some of my stories, if you want to see my daily stuff and recipes, follow my Instagram. But this edge is going to come out and be wider eventually. I'm just working on sort of the taller things right now before I pull this edge out, because I'm not ready to manage the next level. So we're building it slowly. It's a long game. So these are taller than you would typically have, like right up against your rock edge here. I'll pull this out a couple of feet and we'll taper down. We'll have plants this tall, then this tall, and then our ground cover things ultimately. But I put this one here for a couple of reasons. First off, it's absolutely gorgeous, right? I love to look at it, but it's going to provide this pear tree, which is going to be a tiny tree. Protection. So this right now comes to here on me. I'm going to cut this down to where these branches branch off. These two right here. So this is the main stem That's coming out, and we're gonna let this branch out from those two right in there. And that's gonna make this super, super short. That's what we're going for. That's a tiny tree. Now, this is not ideal times. We're already in summer, the first week of June, to do this. Like, you wanna do this in the fall or early spring, but I can get away with it here because I know how to baby plants, first off, and because we have a milder climate, and because these are right by my front door, I will be babying these, watering them every day, keeping close eyes on them. So just be mindful of that. Be careful when you do this. But this is here to protect this pear tree. It's going to give it protection from the sun. Pretty much that's it. Protection from the sun so that it's not fried as it adjusts to its new spot. Fruit trees also, I've killed so many fruit trees by planting them, and if you don't water them properly, like a lot of water for a few weeks, then they get too dry and they die. I've even had some die a couple of months later that got too dry. So they just need time to be established, and this protects them as they get established. Now, this is also a great crop for this area, for a couple of reasons. For one, to protect this. For two, look at these leaves. They're gigantic. So this is creating a microclimate over here. If you were to put your hand near this plant, it is cooler than if you put it over here. It's creating a little microclimate and cooling things off, which is also good for our tree to protect it in the hot summer months. Especially the trees I'm putting in. Some of them like really hot weather, but some of them don't. And then we also have these leaves, which are full of minerals and nutrients that become mulch. So after I put this pear tree in, I can take some of these leaves, put it around the base. My tree's protected from weeds, has a nice cover to keep the soil moist, again, holding in water, protecting the plant. This is what we're making our ground cover with and our mulch. This is what feeds our fruit trees. The last thing, and I didn't tell you the name of this plant, this is Elecamp. The last thing with Elecamp is, first off, it's just so incredible. I can't wait for it to bloom. It's in the sunflower family. It is a medicinal, and you use the root, and you want to use the root on year 2. This is year one. So this is going to bloom. I'm going to take some seeds from it so I can start some new ones. I'm going to hack it back. We're going to have all this bio waste, is what I call it, to mulch with and create a climate with. That will happen once my pear is established. So when this burns out, my pear should be adjusted by then and should be really well. I also have another backup bush back there to protect my pear from too much sun. And then come year 2, this is going to do this again and grow big. My pear will start to take off, but it's still going to need some protection in that first official year, because we're kind of coming in halfway through the year. So this will start to grow alongside. That shade encourages trees to grow. Believe it or not, if you can grow trees and bushes in a shadier environment, they get bigger faster and establish faster. Their goal in the forest is to be the biggest and the tallest. So anytime they're getting light, they're like fighting and growing really fast, trying to get that light so that they win, and they are the ones shading out other things that then can't grow, right? It's survival of the fittest with our plants. So that's what we're doing. That'll happen year 2. It'll encourage us to grow faster. And then after that, when the pear is now strong, sorry, there's a car coming in behind me. When the pear is now strong, this gets harvested for its roots, which are used for medicinal purposes. I will have collected seeds and started new versions of this plant, planted them somewhere else to do this job all over again. So that's what we're doing. That's the power of permaculture. It's awesome. So let me show you how to cut this tree, and we're going to get it in the ground, and I will show you my wild trees and how we're going to nurture them back to health. Okay, so I mentioned where we're going to cut this, and we're going to take off, take off this main branch here. Boop. I'm going to take off this little one too. So that is all that's left. That is certainly a tiny tree. This is a Bartlett pear, and it's going to be super fun to have right by the door, right by the walkway here. So I'm going to dig a little hole and get this guy in. Here are some plants I got from Azure Standard. I got some coneflower and some medicinal yarrow. Both things you can start from seed, but you know, sometimes you just got to let other people do things. I'm going to put a little compost in. Ideally, I would have my own compost because I've mentioned before, I don't trust compost anymore. I do like this variety. This is the kickin' chicken, but typically I have my own compost. We'll talk about that in another video. Just don't right now. All right, and we're gonna dig our spot. Now I have a bunch of strawberries and things in here. Those are edge plants. Those will come out and be against the rocks here. This is just where they spread. For now, I'm not gonna worry about replacing them, moving them. This is a radish gone to seed. I was just growing it for biomass. And by biomass, I mean exactly what I just did. Just things to throw down. I would eat the radish if it was good. I just didn't catch it in time. I've actually been eating the pods. You can eat the radish pods. But it's just to create mulch. Healthy, nutrient-rich mulch. This doesn't have much to it. Look at this. Can you guys see all those roly-polies, pill bugs? That's what kills people's gardens. Eat your seeds. One of the reasons I like growing in the towers, because pill bugs can't mess with my stuff in the towers. That's it. So you notice I didn't use much compost. I'm just inoculating the soil a little bit, and then I put the clay back around it. That's what we're going for. We want these to be adapted to this environment, and we want to use our permaculture plants and things to do the job for us. So I need to grab these other trees. It. We have our very sad looking cherry trees. They will be fine. I'm going to put them right here. And so that keeps the tree I'm nurturing and the pear tree close together, so I'm tending to both of them. I'm going to repeat this process for a couple more trees. Let me show you what they are. I won't make you watch me do all this, but I do want to show you where to cut them based on the tree. The pear you saw at the fork. Some of these other trees are a little trickier. So our yard is mostly clover, intentionally, and the bees. You can hear the honeybees are out. Okay, so we have a red golden nectarine. So the other 3 trees I'm planting so the other 3 are plums, nectarines, and peaches, all the same family, rock fruit. So when we're cutting these, if I were to leave this like this, this plant will quadruple in size in a season. So it would be 4 times big. So that's my dwarf back there. It would be as big as that dwarf tree come next spring. They grow tremendously fast. But this one also has a pretty established main stem, so you do need to be a little careful. And we're just gonna do it. You know, you're gonna run the risk that you may kill the tree. But I'm gonna say we won't kill it. So I took it off, similar to the other one, but not quite as low. The original fork would be here. I took it off the original fork on the last one. I'm not gonna do that on this one. Instead, I'm gonna remove these bottom branches because peaches, nectarines, and plums, they are longer branched. So this one is okay if it gets a little bit taller than me, and then I cut the branches and trim it this way, more than this way, because the branches are gonna go like this. It's just the nature of these trees. So I can encourage them to go down, but I will probably just keep them the span of my arms. And so we're just gonna clip off side to side and kind of grow it this way with a little bit on the top. So that's what it looks like. And we're ready to put this one in the ground. I am gonna put this one in the ground because I wanna get those other 2 trees into a pot to be nurtured. All right, and we have some clay left over. All right, we're gonna put our blueberry back in. It's gonna go just right here in the front, which gives us that understory. Gonna kind of catty corner it. This is a mulberry. This will be a peach. That bush will ultimately go. That is a hydrangea that is just creating micro environments right now, microclimates. But the reason that one's gonna go, it's too big for what it is. It's a great plant. I will put it somewhere else. But here we want to grow food. And so I want to use my flowers. I want my flowers to be small plants and bushes, not these gigantic things. Right now it serves an amazing purpose because I'm not ready. I want the pear to establish and get bigger. And I want this to establish and get bigger before I decide what goes in between them. And that just requires giving them some time. Looking at how they develop. What is their unique shape going to be? And what food can we put in between them that will thrive the most? So that's all. It's a long game. And one you got to really think about. But don't overthink it. Get your perennials in the ground. And I will tell you, worst case, like this guy, you just move them one day. It's fine. I put these way too far back because I didn't realize how far out I wanted to take this bed. All right, we're gonna put both of these in this one pot. It's plenty big. All we're doing is giving these probably until the fall time to recover in a shady, protected spot where I'm watering them, keeping a close eye on them. And then as I start to see fresh signs of budding in the fall, they will actually go behind you guys on the forest edge. These are perfect forest edge trees because they're already wild. And they'll multiply. Give me an entire edge of cherries. This is why I don't garden here. Like traditional annual garden. It's clay. It's a nightmare. It's a fortune to try and rectify it. Doesn't hold. Clay wants to be clay. Doesn't mean you can't build good soil, but if you're doing it on a seasonal basis, it is a struggle. If you do it permaculture style, it will hold because there's so much protecting the soil. It's so alive and it's constantly being renewed with mulch as I chop and drop things. As things change throughout the season, we're just piling and piling and piling the goodness on top. All right, these, I'll pull them up a little, and they are good. All right, those are my garden chores for today. We have new seeds started for our annuals to feed us. We've got long-term plants in, fruit trees that'll feed us for many years to come. I pray this blesses you with inspiration and knowledge to get out there and start your own permaculture gardening or tower gardening or any kind of gardening that you can do with the space you have. God bless you. I'll see you next time.